Hello, everyone. Welcome to our lunch webinar presented by the Friedrich-Naumann Foundation for Freedom. This web talk here is a part of our Female Changemaker series, the last one this year actually, and belongs to a series of web talks in which our moderator, Caroline Gills, interviews female changemakers across the world that are currently advocating for democratic change in their countries. Our focus for today is the country India. The situation in India is concerning gender equality and violence against women is really extremely alarming. For instance, through 18, it was classified as the most dangerous country in the world in these regards. So in this midday discussion, we would like to talk with Dr. Roshmi Goswami and Manjari Mishra about the current situation in the country and hear about the experiences. To briefly introduce our female changemaker, Dr. Roshmi Goswami is a feminist human rights activist and independent expert renowned for her work on women in conflict situations in India. She also serves as a board member of the Urgent Action Fund based in the USA, a director of South Asians for Human Rights, and a founding member of the National Alliance of Women. Welcome. Also, I would like to extend a warm welcome to Manjari Mishra. She is the communication officer at the South Asia Regional Office of the Friedrich-Naumann Foundation for Freedom. And the discussion will be moderated by Caroline Gill. She has a degree in European relations and socioeconomic transformation, and for many years has initiated and moderated discussions with international experts. Thank you all for being here. Before we start, let me explain just one Zoom setting to you. You are very welcome to ask your questions during this web talk. Therefore, you can just use the button on the lower end of your screen. It's called Q&A to post questions, and we will try to tie in as many as possible. So now, I hope you'll all enjoy this lunch web talk. Caroline, let's start.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, hello everyone. It's great to see you today. And I'm very happy to host the last session of the year within the series #Female Changemaker. So good morning, good evening all around the world, because in India, it's already almost evening. In Germany, it's a lunch talk. So hello from Germany. And first of all, let me thank you, the Friedrich-Naumann Foundation for Freedom, to host this series, especially Sonja, to you and to the office of Baden-Württemberg. So we started the series already 3 years ago, introducing female changemakers from all around the world. We want to empower people, inspire women to be courageous, to stand up, because we believe that change can start at home, at work, in society, and it always starts with a decision. Today, we will focus on India. As you already heard from Sonja within the introduction, it's kind of really alarming situation in India, but already some changes have been made. And today we want to introduce and speak with Dr. Roshmi Goswami and Manjari Mishra about their experiences, their perspective from India, because both are in New Delhi right now. So we will get a vibrant and quite actual impression from what is going on in India. So if you have questions, of course, you're invited to write to us. I will ask Dr. Roshmi Goswami directly, or Manjari, so you can also address the question to one of them or to both. And we have 1 hour for our talk, so it's a great break for lunch, hopefully, with some insightful input on the situation of women in India. Roshmi, I will start with you, as always, introducing our female change makers. Sonja also said in the introduction, also in the invitation, we mentioned that India was named one of the most dangerous countries in the world for women, but also for LGBTIQ activists. And I want to ask you if you could give us your or speak about your impression how this violence and discrimination actually looks like from your point of view?
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you. At the outset, let me thank FNF for inviting me to be on this panel. It's always interesting and exciting interacting with different people. And I appreciate this invitation at the end of the year. Thank you. So let me dive straight into your question. But at the outset, I would also like to say that uh, India is a very, very vast country, and it's difficult to really represent the country as such, because it has such huge diversities, different kinds of issues, different sensitivities, different ethnicities, and so on. So I can't be claiming to represent a pan-India sort of perspective. What I will be doing, I come from Northeast India, and as you in your introduction introduced me, that my focus uh, has been on the impact of conflict on the lives of women. So that is really going to be my input into this session. I hope that works for you. That it's not a very general comment on India, but I will go right into a very specific area of my work, which I think gives you a sense of one bit of India, and I will try and bring it to the larger context. Is that all right, Caroline, with you?
Of course, of course.
Yes. And I think we have another person from India, so whatever I leave out, I think that can be filled in by her. Uh, so let me start by answering your question of where are we today? I mean, it is really, I think when you first invited me, I gave you a kind of a vague response because, frankly, the Gaza genocide has impacted us in a very, very deep way. And it continues to till date in the sense that every day something is getting demolished. For me, it is actually every day the foundations on which my work was anchored. Every day, one of the building blocks is gone. So, in that, one has to recalibrate, reassess, relook at strategies and say, so it's a moment of real questioning of what does it actually mean, because my work was very human rights focused, but what does it actually mean today has been a constant question. So I want to foreground that before I mean kind of answer any question. So when you say that the situation in India is very dangerous for India, for women, uh, it's quite it's quite paradoxical at the moment, because the official image that you will have from India is a huge visibility of women, in different positions of power, in doing so many things, and there is a big hype from the state projection of India. There is a great hype of what women are doing. So you will see them striding across male dominated areas of work which they haven't done before. So all of that keeps coming out, but it's more PR than anything else. Reality, just before I came here, I was just going through my phone and there was this uh, just a news item which said a man beheaded his wife in, of course, the state of Uttar Pradesh, which is one of the more problematic states in North India, because she was late in giving him his cup of tea. So it is as basic as that, and this is a husband-wife relationship. So what does that incident tell you? That there are heightened, despite all the modernity, despite the so-called strides ahead and so on, that in my opinion, as an older person, that India is really on a reverse gear situation as far as the understanding about women and women's rights is concerned. It has become far more conservative, far more, of course, it is completely right wing, like many countries are across the world. We are unfortunately going through a fundamentalist right wing virus, worse than the COVID virus across the world. And India is also caught up in that, unfortunately. So there are heightened levels of aggression, and heightened levels of a very machismo culture, which is highly appreciated. And the norm for most people is this militarized machismo image, which even women aspire to be part of that. You will find a great kind of cheering for women joining the military or being part of the police or being part of. Now, if I delve more into the kind of work that I am doing, I have done in all these years, where we have constantly rejected male as the defining norm of how women's activities or women's stride forward should be shaped, then you will understand that this militaristic machismo culture, the rise of this is very, very concerning, because it kind of permeates down to different levels, and there is more aggression at
May
different.
May I ask? Sorry for interrupting you, but may I ask what are the reason for this change and development? Is it like you said, it's like international, this right-wing rise of right-wing parties and perhaps machismo in general? But well, we are now in the year 2023, and so I was wondering why now.
Why this has suddenly come up? This is a question that we feminists constantly have. See, we are part of the 90s, which was like almost a golden period of all of those conferences. There was the Vienna Conference, so women's rights are human rights, was adopted. The violence against women special rapporteur was, there was a declaration on violence against women in 1993, and the UN special rapporteur on violence against women was appointed, and that person was from our region. So, we've come a long way from that. Then in 94, you had the Cairo conference, where there were huge gains made on very critical reproductive and sexual rights issues. And women led those. And I was part of the whole Beijing process in India and internationally. And so we made a lot of gains in the 90s. And we thought we made those gains, frankly, but actually we didn't. I think patriarchy was always there. And over this period of time, I think as globalization became more aggressive, as the market took over, a lot of decisions were driven by the market. I think a more aggressive and aggressive in different in different areas. Not aggressive just in terms of physical violence, but a more aggressive lifestyle of markets, of just being, of living, of everything. Took over, and I don't have an absolute complete analysis, but it's something that we are all grappling with and trying to sort of come to terms with. And there has been, as we know, there has been a huge rollback and pushback on all the gains that we made in the 90s. Country after country after country, on abortion rights, on whatever rights, there has been a rollback. So it's like a cycle, and it's very, very, very concerning, but also very tiring. And I don't think it is only specific to India, it's across the world.
Manjari, what are your experiences? Did you personally experience this violence and discrimination? You're a representative of the Friedrich-Naumann Foundation for Freedom, also representing another generation. So I was asking if you or your female friends she experienced this kind of discrimination.
Firstly, I would like to thank the Baden-Württemberg office to conduct this web talk today, and I'm glad to be here in presence of Dr. Goswami. I mean, when she says that there is a generation who saw the change happening in 90s, I was born in 90s, and right now I can see the shift happening from. Well, I must say that there are some victories still. Like I'm a single girl child. I must say that I come from a privileged background in that manner, but I've had free education because of the single girl child policies, and I was lucky enough to get into one of the leading universities in country, which is the Jawaharlal Nehru University, and studied there, which was minimal payment for education, and I think I have been very privileged to get these many resources, which, to be honest, I think not a lot of women coming from a different area altogether. So I come from Madhya Pradesh. I come from. I've never stayed in one city, but I've seen different cities in Madhya Pradesh. Not a lot of women from that state got the chance to come further. They were married off early, even in my generation, which is hard to imagine, because a progress that was happening in 90s, we still get the benefit of it. So I think there has been a huge shift. I must say that there has been a shift in good ways and also in worse ways, as Dr. Goswami has put forth. And when it comes to violence against a specific gender, or violence against any gender per se, specifically women, it has increased in multiple levels. But at the same time, I think that women are moving forward. We are getting educated. We have the opportunities, which I think not everyone does, but whoever could get it, I think if we have enough resources, I think we will be able to get better in that manner. But I have a very optimistic approach still, because I hope that this what has been happening, and I read the news that Dr. Goswami read as well, and I just hope that one way or another, if we have female change makers like Dr. Goswami, we get to a better part of it. We don't have to face this, and yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah, I think in my experience, things have urbanization specifically has provided a background where it is scary. At the same time, it is also uplifting. So, for example, me being a young kid who came to Delhi from a smaller city, it's a very personal experience. I can't say that it is applicable to everyone. My parents were against me coming to Delhi, because Delhi was one of the Nirbhaya Hatyakand, like the murder case, happened in 2012. I started studying in 2013. So they were against me coming to Delhi by myself and studying here. I had to fight a lot of battles just to come and study here in Delhi, within my family, and I'm just talking about one person. A lot of my other cousins or my friends, they were not even allowed to come to Delhi. They went to other states like Maharashtra, which is, well, in their perspective, it is safer than Delhi. But coming here, I was in general afraid to go out at night. I still have to think twice, even though I have huge support system, like specifically women in my friend circle, in my social circle, who help me with everything. At the same time, I still have to think twice. Okay, oh, it's getting late. I have to go back home, or do I stay here, or I have to make these decisions on a regular basis. But I must say that with availability of the public transport that has been there, it has become better. I used to travel in buses, and it was difficult for me to travel in buses and just not think about being harassed by a man or someone in that bus, right? Even during the day. So it has been changing, but at the same time, I don't see a major change. Like Kejriwal has introduced a free bus ride for women. Still, if I would have the chance and if I would have the money to go from one place to another, I would take an auto rickshaw. I would not go in the bus. So I think, yes, I would agree to a certain extent, but I would still like to be hopeful in that manner. So.
Is there a way how you can protect yourself? Is there something that you're doing or that the government, for example, is also offering for you and your female friends?
I mean, there is a helpline. There is a women helpline, which the government claims it to be working every moment. But if you get into the bureaucratic system in India, you would rather stay away from it. So there, so just like Dr. Goswami said, that uh, there is a portrayal of system that is functioning, but at the same time, we know how it functions. So um, it's always tricky. Even if you want to go call the helpline, sometimes it works. Sometimes the PCR van is like the police van is right there and they help, but at the same time, we would rather not go through that way because it's so many steps to go further from that. And in general, women get harassed by police itself sometimes to, to just file a complaint. Like it's, and I must say that this is very personal experience. Must be a different way and different approach towards it. But yeah, for me, we tried it once, like calling this helpline, and there were so many informations that were being asked on a call that we were like, okay, let's just call friends rather than calling the police. If somebody is following you, you would rather call friends than calling the police. So that's what my experience has been.
Oh, well, that's quite an alarming analysis. Roshmi, how do you think or did the government is reacting on these issues? What has been changed in the last years?
On the issue of violence against women?
Yes.
I'd like to take the discussion out of the violence against women circuit.
Okay.
Because I find, you know, as I said, I do come from a context of conflict. And in that context of conflict, while violence against women was a very, very critical component, especially sexual violence, by the state and by non-state both. And it was also helped by the promulgation of extremely draconian laws which were in operation in a conflict affected area like the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. So you see, this kind of issues of physical violence is something that the state is okay You know, I mean, it works, doesn't work. You can go into those details, how the police behave, they don't behave, you know, all of that. So there are certain systems put in place. And the government is okay with organizations who work on violence against women. And I have found this also in the US. As long as you are addressing violence against women, you are doing your little thing. You know, you are fine. I've gone to many reservations in the US where the main focus of the federal government is on violence against women. But there are so many other issues of that community. There is the whole issue of land rights of people. There is the whole issue of questioning of government policies and structures. And I think women today, especially the younger generation, it's important that they do the work which is focused on violence, but then to understand that the violence has to be located within a larger patriarchal context within which it is getting perpetrated. And that is the point. I mean, you know, in my work, it was a context of conflict in a particular area. I come from Northeast India, which was had years and years of protracted armed conflict. It's a region which is outside, almost outside of India, in the sense that connected by a very small corridor, and it has international borders on all sides. So strategically and politically, a very sensitive area. So we don't have time to go into those dynamics. So there were many, many layers of things. Now, in such a context, while violence against women was important and we were at it, addressing it, but there is also violence against the community itself. So you are grappling with individual rights for women. At the same time, you are grappling with community rights. And I think in India today, that is the challenge. That is the challenge. I mean, you are not just a woman who is violated. You could be violated because you belong to a particular caste, you belong to a particular economic category, you belong to a particular religion, you belong to a particular ethnicity, you belong to a particular political persuasion, or you belong to a younger generation of women. And I see a lot of those who are asking very, very hard questions, which is to do with land rights, which is to do with environment, which is to do with the corporate takeover of huge tracts of land, of indigenous peoples, and so on. So violence kind of comes packaged under a very, very kind of charged political context, and we have to address violence within that context. I'm not saying that you don't address the day-to-day violence, that is important, but to constantly bring it back to the larger structural political environment under which it is taking place, and then ask the question. And if women seem to be more visible, and for me, coming from Northeast India, this visibility actually, I'm sorry, it doesn't have too much of an impact, because in my region, women were never behind parda. Parda is like, segregation. We don't come from a region of where women are segregated. Women are very visible in all spheres of life. That doesn't mean they don't have issues. They have a lot of issues. The state that I come from has three dominant matrilineal tribal groups who are the main ethnic communities in my state. And they have a lot of independence, autonomy in the areas, economic independence, but still there is very great levels of violence. So the visibility of women is okay, but it doesn't tell you the whole story, is what I'm trying to say.
Just a detailed question. You mentioned, or both of you mentioned that you can only speak for a specific region from the the north, northeast of India, but what would be the difference, north and south? I mean, of course, there are many states in India, but like just to give us a more precise impression what the differences are.
Yeah. So I come from Northeast India, which has 7 states, is freedom. It's a very, very diverse state with over 250 indigenous communities, largely Christian. It's not dominated by Hindu kind of groups or anything like that, but it's mixed. I mean, it has large Christian population, but I'm not saying they are not conservative. They are also equally conservative. But the visibility of indigenous peoples, what should I say? We take so many things for granted. When you go to the rest of India, you realize, oh, it doesn't work in the same way. You are comfortable with your bodies, you are comfortable in stepping out of the house, and what Manjari just pointed out. Some things are just taken for granted in Northeast India because it's so basic. So Northeast India in that way doesn't have too many restrictions, but it is not that it doesn't. It does have, so you have to unpack the layering. It doesn't have impositions of certain way you dress and certain way you eat and so on, which many of the rest of, especially North India. South India, again, women are, especially Kerala and states like that, are very evolved. So it varies from state to state. I don't come from North India and from Central India, which is like the Hindu belt, and I don't want to comment on it. But we come from 2 different regions, and I think Manjari's region is far more conservative, and to be able to move out of that conservative structure, yes, it takes a lot of effort, and therefore I can have I can appreciate when you talk about how there has been this women have evolved out of that structured and more cloistered life that was imposed. That's my comment on general, but it's very difficult to generalize, really. It's so huge. Yeah. And also and then I may add that there is this whole issue of son preference, which plays a role. And many of these, my region, there is no such thing as son preference. A child is a child is a child. And in fact, in my state, which is matrilineal, the girl child is just, the most precious and treasured child. Sometimes I question them. I said, you're discriminating against, the boy. And that is absolutely different in many of these other states in India, where you don't complete your life if you don't have a son type of an attitude, right? And your inheritance rights goes to the boys, and there is a whole area of work there which needs to be done around inheritance, around the mindsets about if you don't have a boy, then what happens, and what is it that the girls can do, and what the boys can do and the girls can't do. I mean, there are less, but lots of people are breaking those norms and stepping forward.
Yep. Manjari, I see that you want to comment, that you made similar experiences. So we're looking forward to what you have to add.
So I agree to the larger extent. I must say that patriarchy is omnipresent in the northern belt and the central belt of India, at least. But at the same time, I think women are coming forward, and I really see that shift happening. So I'm a single girl child, so I have no siblings, no other male, female, any sibling. And for my family, it was a difficult, like for my mother, she had to fight for me to be educated or to put me forward saying that, okay, I do not want to have multiple children whom I cannot educate because she is earning and funding my education. And it was her right, it is her body, her right. But at the same time, she still had to fight the system. And that I think I've seen in a lot of other parents as well. So I have other friends, cousins who are single children, and that too a female child. But there is always a grandmother in the back saying that, you know what, a boy is a necessity to get the inheritance rights or whatever. It is always the case. It is changing. I must say that this generation, like my generation, not, I must say that again, individual experience. Just like Dr. Goswami said, we cannot generalize it because when you go to rural area, the story is altogether different. But in an urban area, people are still fine now with having a girl child and not having a boy child. They are happy with one child or at least two children, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be from a particular gender. So it's changing. But in my generation, in when I was growing up, it was very difficult. Like it was an alien phenomena to just have one girl child, specifically in my state, and not having another child. Or why are you not having another child? Is the question that has been asked to my mother since even when I was like 18 years old. That why don't you have another kid, which is a male child? It's like, but this has been the narrative in the northern part of India, but I have seen a lot of women coming from southern India as well, facing challenges, patriarchy altogether in their state, in their own way. Um, but I think that area there is a little different. There is still a little bit more progressive mindset. And one most important thing I see that is that even though not every educated person is uh, per se educated and they still believe in the system of patriarchy. So this shift, this cultural shift of acceptance of equality has to happen in our country, but I don't know how fast it can happen. It has been generations that we are facing this patriarchal system and it hasn't changed. But women come over it, women try to work through it, and women do come at the forefront and make the change happen. So I think there is still hope to it. Yeah.
Roshmi, were there any new laws introduced targeting all these challenges by the government in last years? Or do you see any actions by the government?
Well, in most cases, of course, the government itself is the problem. So what laws have they brought into effect? You see, my work has largely been framed by government obligation under the CEDAW Convention, the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. And it has three components. One is non-discrimination, one is equality, and not formal equality, but substantive equality. And the third is government or state obligation to further equality and to ensure that women are not discriminated against. Now, we have worked very diligently using, because the CEDAW Convention was ratified by the government, and it provides, it's an international bill of rights for women, and using that framing, one has pushed through, the sexual harassment guidelines at workplace. So there is a whole lot of laws for women which has used this concept of equality, like the Domestic Violence Act is also framed taking into this the notion of substantive equality which is there in CEDAW. So, there have been more and more laws where feminist groups have pushed for, and the ones who use, are kind of led by the thinking of the CEDAW Convention, where they have pushed for these laws. So I can't go into the details of how many laws were adopted because that is not the point. The point is in the implementation of the laws. So there have been progressive laws because, feminists have engaged. But do the laws get implemented? Or is it subjective or partial implementation? And that is where we are, not just in this country. I mean, I think the Gaza genocide brings out that precisely, that there are laws, there are human rights norms, they are applicable to certain people and not applicable to others. And I think that is true also of the laws that we have in India. Is it easy, for instance, for a Dalit woman from a rural area coming to access some of these laws? A poor woman, a Dalit woman, a rural woman, a young woman. So, there are these, it is intersectional. So laws are there, but in the implementation of the laws, it is always intersectional. It is mediated by your different identities. Where you belong, how are you situated, and where do you come from? And that is a major struggle for people. For anyone coming to access, get those, to even file, for some instances, to file the first information report in a police station if you are violated. There are countless examples where a woman has been raped, and the first information report that has to be filed of the police station of refusing to file even that, to take in that report, depending on who is going to file that. If you are a person of means, if you are a richer person or, a wealthier person, if you belong to a higher caste, if you are not a minority religion, if you're not Muslim, if you are not Christian, if you're not tribal, then maybe the chances of you filing that report is much higher than a person who's not. 2 years back, I think we had this awful case called the Hathras rape case of the death of who was gang raped, a Dalit, young Dalit girl who was gang raped, and she died and she was killed. And, for me, it was horrific because across all communities, the least that you do is that you hand over the dead body to the families for the last rites. For the last rites is a very, very important. I am just now involved with a state called Manipur, and we are going through this whole process of the last rites of dead bodies. So that's a very important for any family to put closure to the death of their loved ones. And this girl's body was not handed over to the family. It was the police kind of did the cremation. And to make things worse, a journalist who came to report about this gang rape of this Dalit girl was put behind bars. The draconian law was slapped on him and he was put behind bars. So, it's laws are there, but how is it implementation? How is it implemented is where we are stuck. And that requires it requires state to have greater accountability towards women to ensure that these are implemented. and that so it will be at local levels, right? I'm not saying that the prime minister sitting in Delhi or whatever will be responsible for all of that. It is at local levels that this implementation happens. So to ensure that that is done. So this is an ongoing challenge as you go forward.
Is this the source for your motivation? How it all started with your work? This control of the implementation of laws?
No, my motivation came, as I said, during the Beijing process. I think the Beijing process was very critical in India because there was an attempt to bring in voices from the margins into the whole India position paper, okay, and the whole kind of representation of India at an international conference. And it was a very, very sincere effort. So I kind of documented the issues of Northeast India, which was, as I said, it was a conflict affected region. And there were layers and layers of issues. There were ethnic violence going on and so on. So I was documenting that. Another friend of mine was documenting, was bringing in the voices of Dalit women. Somebody else was not enough, but there was an attempt to, it was very early then, to bring in LGBT voices, but I agree that it wasn't enough. So, you know, issues that were left out of the margins in the Nairobi conference and other conference was being kind of consolidated. And that's how I came in. And I came in from a region of political unrest. So there was, for me, not just women's rights issues, but it was also the community rights issue. And the balancing between individual rights versus community rights has been an ongoing challenge in my life of how do you, and we had, as I said, there was a draconian law called the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which was in operation and which provided impunity for violations of disappearances, of enforced disappearances, sexual violence, and so on. So, you know, so there was a political motivation of taking on the issues of women because, you know, women are caught between different sets of violators, the state as well as non-state. I'm not saying the state is the only violator. The non-state is also a violator. And women are caught between the two. So that was my motivation.
And did you face, like in your biography and work, any challenge? And like, of course, every day is a challenge, and you described where it all started. But did you have any problems in your career and how you faced them?
Right. So using the CEDAW framing was very, very useful because it provided an important framing, an endorsement by the country itself, since it had ratified. So you have a frame of reference which has already been ratified. And then I am coming from a region where there were movements for self-determination and so on, who were kind of, you know, already kind of dealing with the UN system and had a notion. So even if we were entering in to look at women's rights, we were using an international Bill of Rights. So we were not kind of opposed by the men so much, you know, so it was like it provided us that we are using CEDAW, and we kind of went in. And I must say that this engagement using CEDAW has been really useful because we stayed with it. And then in the year 2013, when eventually CEDAW came up with a general recommendation 30, which was specifically because CEDAW does not have an article on conflict. Okay, so you are reporting under CEDAW, but there isn't a specific article on conflict. So you are using all of the other articles to present. And I want to put on record that we were the very first who provided to the CEDAW committee a chapter on the impact of armed conflict on the lives of women. We were really the very first. And that from that point, one has just moved and moved. And in 2013, the general recommendation on women in armed conflict, when it was adopted, one could see in that general recommendation all the recommendations that we had put in, in defining, in saying defined and undefined armed conflict, except acknowledged and non-acknowledged. We talked about state and non-state violations, and the non-state included multinational corporations, private armies, and all of that. So these are words that we were able to put in. And then we also looked at extraterritorial obligation of other states. If India was reporting and another state was violating within India, that state was liable to, was answerable. So, we staying with just that, the focus on conflict, we were able to move a lot ahead. And that I feel gratified that we were able to do that. But where it is today is, as I said, a big question mark.
Dear audience, if you have questions, of course, you're kindly invited to write in the Q&A function. We had one question on the current state of the democracy of India. I don't know if you want to comment on that, Goswami, but perhaps you can also go on with your reflection on your biography and your work, because in your first answer you mentioned that all these goals have not been achieved in a way. I mean, now you gave us an example which goals actually have been achieved, but still things that did not move in the way you were working for. What does it mean for you, Roshmi?
Well, when I say that we achieved this on CEDAW, but then I ended by saying, but today the UN system itself has collapsed. And we see that it is subjective, that it is applicable, that the human rights, the normative standards is great, that people have worked. And when I'm saying that we added a general recommendation 30, it was the normative standard. You expand what is the meaning of armed conflict and what are the various parameters of armed conflict that one needs to address and its impact on women. So all of that is fine, right? But the point is that if you look at the general collapse of the UN system today, that it is subjectively applicable. It is applicable to certain states and it is not applicable. So this is the challenge today, that if you accept human rights kind of norms, there has to be equality in its applications across all countries. And that is the point, that will we be able to do that, or will we say that the human rights no longer works, and that 75s of Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and that's it, and now we say goodbye to it, and each country or each region, we the Global South or we South Asia, begin to look at other standards for ourselves, because there is no accountability or there is an inability to ensure accountability of certain states. And this is so clear to us at the moment. So this is the dilemma at the moment. I have no answers to that. As far as my own country is concerned, we are in a very difficult moment of democracy, very, very difficult moment. There are many constitutional lapses. And it's difficult for me to comment on all of it, but a weakened democracy ultimately weakens the country itself. And I hope people who are in seats of power will understand that I want to be proud of my country. I want to be able to say, like the South Africans are today saying, that we are carrying on the legacy of Nelson Mandela. I want to be that kind of an Indian, to be able to say that what we achieved in 1947, what we put forth, what our forefathers and the ones who framed our constitution was put into the constitution, and they are able to stand strong and high. I want to be able to say that, but I am not sure I can say that. And this is, it's a sad moment. It's a reflective moment of how do we go. But let me say a but. Having said that, I do want to refer to the farmers' movement, which we had 2 years back. And I think that is the strength of India, that the people's movement, all of these other things may not work. I think human rights mechanisms, government, state accountability, and all of that may not work. But the spirit of people, democracy in India is alive because of uh, mass movements. It is alive because of people from the grassroots who are engaging. It is not you and me, or it's not Manjari and me and people, educated people, who's keeping democracy alive. It is people rooted in the soil, in the land, who's keeping democracy alive. And the farmers' movement is an example. It's a huge positive example of the state of democracy in India. Yes, there are challenges, but there is also spirit and resilience in the mass of Indian people. And I think we will thrive. We will continue despite all odds.
Manjari, you heard these positive examples. How the foundation, Friedrich-Naumann Foundation for Freedom, is supporting, whether we just heard a focus on human rights and democracy, but also women's rights. So how do you support these positive tendencies?
I will just give two examples. So we work with a partner called Action Community and Research. It's called Arch in Gujarat. And there are two couples who have been working there in Dediapada. It's a small village in Gujarat, which is another state in the Western India. And they work directly with people in that village. They help them get their land titles, and they ensure that the land titles are in the name of both husband and wife, or man and woman. So we have been working with this partner for a while now. And during COVID, they also started this handloom weaving training for the women in the village, because they generally, these people in the village were going outside selling their vegetables or whatever they were making, and to ensure their health, and to ensure that during COVID, we anyway couldn't move. India was in a very strict lockdown. And so we collaborated with them to give handloom trainings for the women of Dediapada, and that helped them create a remuneration for themselves and create a business for themselves. And those women are still weaving and getting their stuff out of the village. That was one of I'm just mentioning a few changes, a few examples over here. Another partner that we work with is called SARD, which is a partner which under the Central Tibetan Administration, and they provide a workshop for menstrual hygiene and health for the women in different cities, specifically Tibetan women. So these are the two examples, two highlights that I would like to put here. We have done a lot of work when it comes to women empowerment, and one of our small project during COVID was that we wanted to ask for short stories of people who are basically nominating, well, we called it female heroes, who wear not only sari dupatta or whatever they want to, was the tagline. We collected the stories from women of from the people from all the walks of lives, and we got a really good response from not only India but all over South Asia. But these are just like small victories. FNF has been working with a lot of our partners who are working on the grassroots level for women empowerment. So yeah, I just wanted to mention these few projects. Yeah, I forgot the last part of the question. Could you please repeat?
Roshmi, do you have any, we heard these examples, do you have any recommendation for this kind of projects also within international corporations and support you would highlight from your experience?
You know, as I started off by saying that I am in a very conflicted moment, seeing how the world has responded or not responded to the genocide which is happening on a minute by minute, second by second, and the double standards of the international community. And it's really a very challenging moment, because one has always felt part, like while your work was located at the grassroots or at the local level, you always felt there was a connection to a global community that had shared the same values, had the same commitment to human rights values, and so on. You know, so there was this. And in fact, you met me in Berlin. I mean, even at that moment, which is just 2 months ago, 2 months away, uh, there was still that belief and trust that we can work together. Today, that trust has been broken. I'm very sorry. It is totally, utterly broken, and I don't know in going forward what the future looks like, because the double standards is just very, very hard hitting. Why it is applicable for certain people and it is not applicable for other community. Why is there so much discrimination? Why is the West kind of setting down standards and the global South has to just toe the line? So I no longer think, and this may change as we go forward, and I no longer think of this global community and of partnership and so on. And I think it is best that people, and we are between the devil and the deep sea, because the situation in the country itself is not great at all. So where do you go? So it is only amongst people that you will have to seek. And I, of course, have my feminist network of women from South Asia, and we kind of get support from each other. And I think till things are clearer of how, this horrific moment in history is going to play out, I think it is better that we just remain focused with a very close regional group of solidarity networks, and also begin to see that maybe dependency in terms of funding maybe is something that we need to, because it has been a it's been a double-edged sword, because foreign funding has been used by this government against a lot of groups working on the ground, that if you don't conform to certain things, then it's just kind of withdrawn. The clearance that you need from the government is withdrawn. And then what happens to people? What happens to staff who are hired? And it's an ongoing thing. So on the one hand, it's a stranglehold. Funding is a stranglehold being used both by the government, and now in the last 2 months I'm beginning to see that it is also something that is used by some of these international states and organizations who otherwise think that they are above any kind of accountability to the human rights system. So, it is a moment that we'll have to really reflect and see how we can continue to work or not work, continue to draw different lines, try to find different alliances. Fortunately, South Asia, we do have a very strong alliance amongst us. I am both part of South Asians for Human Rights as well as a feminist network of South Asians. And actually, I'm no longer part of Urgent Action Fund, which you mentioned. I was in the past. So I don't have any definite answers beyond that. But what I am seeing uh, in these last 2 months of looking at social media, that we are done, and our time is over, and we are deeply depressed with the situation. But there are a lot of young voices, and I'm not saying any all young voices which are political, young political voices which are coming up. And that gives me hope that some of them say that it's a generation that you need to be a little more careful about how you deal with us, because we have analysis, we have understanding, and we have determination to bring about change. So for me, I think that is the hope, that some of these more political young voices, whether it is on environment and climate change, whether it is on land rights, whether it is on indigenous people's rights to land and protection, whether it is on justice or whatever, that ultimately maybe that is where our hope lies. Thank you.
Roshmi, thank you so much for your deep reflection. It seems like you put us a mirror. It's also reflecting in a way the whole year and the current state of global challenges. And from your answers, and also Manjari, from your comments and answers, we understood today, even if it was just a 1 hour talk, I hope that, or for me, I can say that I understood much deeper this interconnections of women's rights, of all the challenges in India you mentioned, and also the challenges in the political background. You mentioned Gaza, but of course we have also the war, the Russian war in Ukraine, which is also embedded in this in our talks. You said it's either the devil or the deep sea, so we better get a new diving wear and choose the deep sea to dive in. And so Roshmi and Manjari, thank you so much for joining from New Delhi to share all your experiences and thoughts with us. We wish you a better, a peaceful new year, which is coming, and we will see us, hopefully, your audience next year. We hope to continue with the Female Changemaker series, introducing female changemakers from all over the world. You can also watch other talks on the homepage, Female Changemaker, within the program of the Naumann Foundation. And of course, you're cordially invited to join any other offer of the foundation. So thank you a lot. Have a great day or great evening, and all the best to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. I'm sorry I couldn't be more positive, but it is a very, very dark moment. Thank you.
Thank you all. All the best.
Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays.